Good morning, church. It's great to be together again today, and we are continuing our series on kingdom versus empire. And today we're going to spend a little time in the life of Moses. And as we enter into the Exodus narrative, I want to encourage you to spend some time in the book of Exodus this week, because Egypt and specifically Pharaoh become major characters in this kingdom versus empire narrative. Let's open our Bibles to Exodus chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. The descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all. Joseph was already in Egypt. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died. But the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in numbers, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. And the new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came into power in Egypt. 'Look,' he said to his people, 'the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country.' So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built Pithom and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter and harsh, labor in brick and mortar with all kinds of work in the fields. And all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, 'When you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live.' The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, 'Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?' The midwives answered Pharaoh, 'Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive.' So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave the order to all the people, 'Every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but every girl let live.'" We see that Egypt was a place of salvation for Joseph. But as the Israelites grew, this new Pharaoh disdained the Israelites and put them to work as slaves. And their life became very, very difficult as they were worked, and the Bible says ruthlessly, by their slave masters. And when I went through the narrative this week, the hardest part today was to decide what part of Moses' life to focus on. Throughout the entire story, we see the struggle between God, Moses, and the Israelites. We see Moses take God's people out of Egypt. But then we see them in the desert where God has to take Egypt out of his people. And our struggle is not unlike the struggle of the Israelites. It's not unlike the struggle of Moses himself. So even after they were freed from slavery, they were tempted to return to Egypt time and time again. And today I want to focus on one specific event in Moses' life, his calling, because I feel like it is a microcosm of all that happens in the Exodus. In chapter 2, verse 1, it says, "Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when he could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds among the bank on the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. 'This is one of the Hebrew babies,' she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? Yes, go, she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. Although we're going to be in the book of Exodus today, I wanted to start with an excerpt from Stephen's speech in Acts 7. It says, Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. When Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his own people, the Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian, so he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but he did not. Moses is an incredible example of being torn between empire and kingdom. He was educated in the house of Pharaoh, but he still felt the call of his own people, the Israelites. You know, we are like that, when we want to depend on ourselves. And here we see by acting on his own power and timing, Moses lost his influence and could not help his people. He was surprised that his people did not see him as someone trying to help, even though he had never really been part of the people. And how many of us have not grown up like that? Grown up where our whole lives have been focused on ourselves. Our whole lives have been focused on the empire. Our whole lives have been focused on self-preservation. The central idea behind empire is that when we are self-reliant and focused on self-preservation, we become prideful because our own ego is our center. And God clearly had a plan for Moses. He would use Moses to lead the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. But young Moses was too confident in his own ability. And so he had to be humbled. And God sent him to the desert for 40 years, to Midian. In Exodus 2, verses 16, it says, now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to rule their father, he asked them, why have you returned so early? They answered, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. And where is he? Reuel asked his daughters, why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat. Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, I have become a foreigner in a foreign land. During that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out. And their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There an angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight. Why the bush does not burn up? When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. You know, God sees what is going on, and he sees what's going on in the life of Moses. Because Moses had also heard the cries of his people. He had seen the injustices of his people. And God, although his methods needed to be redeemed, saw a heart for his people. So as the misery of the Israelites increased, God calls on Moses. And he sends Moses to Pharaoh, but Moses' insecurities get the best of him because Moses had committed an error. Moses had made a mistake. And I don't know about you, but sometimes my mistakes dog me. When I feel like I have done something wrong, I have a hard time forgiving myself. And a lot of times we think of pride and we think of pride as arrogance and knowing what I can do. But there's also pride in thinking that I'm not good enough to be used. You might say I'm powerful. But Moses was humbled. And he had to learn that he could no longer rely on his own power. So God uses Moses because he also heard the cries of the people. Although his methods needed to be redeemed, he sends Moses. But Moses allows his insecurities to get the best of him. And he had to learn lessons in the desert. The first lesson he needed to learn was to rely on God's presence. And in Exodus 3, verses 11 and 12, it says, "But Moses said to God, 'Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?' And God said, 'I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain.'" You know, when God gave Moses the task of delivering Israel, Moses in his younger age, in his empire mindset, would have said, I could do this. I can take on Pharaoh. How many of us as young men did not think about taking on our fathers? But Moses said to God, after spending 40 years of being humbled in the desert, after spending 40 years focusing as a shepherd, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you." Moses was paralyzed by his inadequacy. Moses said, "Who am I to do the task?" And I don't know about you, but so many times in life, I feel overwhelmed by the things I have to do. As a husband, so many times I feel overwhelmed. I feel inadequate. I don't know how to be a great husband. And I fail time and time and time again. I don't know how to be a great father. And I fail time and time and time again. I don't know how to be a great friend. And I fail and I fail. And so many times we fail. Moses had failed in his life. And he let that failure dog him. But he had to learn to focus on God and trust in his presence. God replied, "It doesn't matter who you are. What matters is that I will be with you." Moses had to learn that he could do the job not on his own, not by his own resources, but only because God was with him. You know, we're only going to be the men and women that we need to be when we understand that we need to be with God. We need to rely on his presence in our lives. So many people focus on their failures when we really need to focus on God's presence. We also need to rely on God's person. In Exodus 3:13 through 15, it says, "Moses said to God, 'Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you.' And they ask, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?' God said to Moses, 'I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. In his pride, Moses expected the Israelites would realize that God had sent him to deliver them. And that was the point in Stephen's speech, that he said, I don't understand. Why don't they see that I've come? But later on in life, humbled, Moses said, how can I convince the people that you really sent me? God told Moses exactly how to describe him. God introduced himself as I am, the eternal God. But Moses inserted I in the place of I am. God wanted the Israelites to see who God was, but Moses had to learn that he couldn't do it on his own, but only because of God's nature and character. Our job as Christians is to present the world to the great I am. So many times we want to talk about the great things that we are or we do. And we want to rely on ourselves. We want to rely on our own eloquence, our own abilities. And we make it about ourselves. When we invite people to church, a lot of times it's, we have a great church. Or I want you to meet and be part of a great fellowship. And really, our goal is to introduce people to a great God. It's not about who we are as a people. It's about who he is as our God. And we also have to learn to rely on his power. In Exodus 4, verse 1, it says, Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? A staff, the Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground and it became a snake and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake and it turned back into a staff in his hand. We must rely on the power of God. Maybe in our ego or in our empire state, we say, I am powerful, I can do things. Moses could have even said that he had been raised in the Pharaoh's house. He was a son of the Pharaoh's daughter. But Moses said, what if they still don't believe me? What if they don't listen to me? So God gave him the power to perform a miraculous sign and convince people. Moses had to learn that the people would believe him when they saw that God could fulfill a purpose. When you say that God could work his power through him. And one of the things we have to understand is that the real power in our lives as Christians is our testimony. It's who you've become with God, not who you were away from God, who we are when we're running from God, but who we are with God. We have to learn to rely on God's power. So many times we align ourselves with the wrong things. And we run to our insecurities and we allow that to paralyze us. But God wants to do powerful work through us. And he has done powerful work through us. God sent his son to die on the cross so that you and I could live redeemed lives. But a lot of times we have to go through the desert. We have to learn these things. But Moses wasn't done giving excuses. And in Exodus 4, verses 10 through 12, it says, Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past or since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and teach you what to say. You know, Moses said he wasn't eloquent. Stephen said he was powerful in word and deed. Moses had tutors. He was an educated man, well above most people in the world at his time. So I don't feel like it was necessarily a completely an eloquence thing. It was a fact that he did not feel that he could present God's case to God's people. And we have to learn to depend on what God gives us. You know, Moses may have said, I was educated with all the wisdom and sophistication of the Egyptians. But he said, I can't be your spokesman because I'm not good with words. God said, didn't I make your mouth? I will instruct you what to say. Moses had to learn that he could do something difficult because God would provide what he needed. And we have to know that we can do difficult things because God provides what we need. I don't know what you feel like you're lacking today. I don't know what you feel like is hindering you today. But we do need to understand that God gives us everything we need to be successful. Now, sometimes what he sends us to help us be successful are tests. And we've seen through the opening sermons in this series that tests are opportunities for growth. Tests are opportunities for us to present our heart to God, show him where we're at. But then we also get the opportunity to see how much we still need to grow as Christians, how much we still need to grow as God's children. Once we learn to see God's provision, we must learn to rely on God's perspective. Exodus 4:13 through 15 says, but Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord, please send someone else. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. Moses, time after time, gave an excuse. Forgive your servant. Pardon your servant. He just didn't want to do it. But God responded, no, you're going to do it. I've chosen you. I don't know about you, but there's been lots of times in my life I just haven't wanted to do what God wanted me to do. It's hard. It's hard to motivate yourself to do things that are difficult. And so many times I've tried to run. So many times I've tried to put it off. So many times I've tried to just wait for someone else to do it. And God says, no, you're the one. You have to do this. We see it time after time in our lives, in our marriages. You know, we want others to make our marriage great. Oh, if somebody could just tell my wife what she needs to hear, if somebody could just tell my husband what she needs to hear, if somebody could just tell my children what they need to hear. And God says, no, I've sent you. You're the one that I have sent to fix this. I love how it ends in Exodus 4:20, and that's where we're going to end our sermon today, is Moses took his wife and his sons and put them on a donkey and headed back to Egypt. You know, Moses made the decision, I'm going to go. And really, your best ability is your availability. It doesn't matter how talented, how bright, or how untalented you are. God can use you if you are willing. So as we close out today, if we're focused on empire, it's all about what I can or cannot do. If I'm focused on kingdom, it's about what God can do and will do through you. As we end today, let us remember God wants to use us. And I know it's hard. It's different. Nobody is in their comfort zone right now. Evangelism's harder. Preaching is harder. It's harder to preach on camera than it is to people. I miss you guys. It's hard to... We're all learning through this. But it's not about us. It's not about our shortcomings or talents. It's about what God can do. Let us pray for God to move in an incredible way through our church, through our city, through our nation, and through our world. God bless.